Hey, good morning, good afternoon. How is everyone today? Welcome to Banner and Backbones Anti-Fascist Book Club. I'm Nick Perro, and I am joined today by my good friends and colleagues, Chris Goldsmith, Veterans Fighting Fascism on Offense with Chris Goldsmith, the Find Out podcast, Task Force Butler. Did I miss any in there, Chris? You have a laundry list?
Find Out podcast, On Offense podcast, Veterans Fighting Fascism, Task Force Butler, and we could leave it at that.
All right, that sounds good. Good to see you again, Chris.
You as well.
We are also joined today by my good friend Evan Fields, who is News from Underground, Lincoln Square contributor, fellow vet, also Army veteran and friend over the last couple of weeks doing the window of discussion with us over here on Banner and Backbone and Centered America. Evan, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. I'm glad to be here.
Glad you're joining us for the first time today.
Yeah.
And then finally, we have our friend Stephanie Wilson from Freedom Over Fascism. She's also supporting Banner and Backbone, as always, on our anti-fascist book clubs. You've been here for a while with us. And over on Sick of This Shit Publications with me for chronic illness discussions with our good friends over there. And Stephanie's a historian. She has her doctorate in history. So the only time I will say this is welcome, Dr. Stephanie Wilson.
Oh, thank you.
It's good to see you, my friend, Steph.
It's great to see you. I do want to say I'm not a veteran, but I was born on an American air base to a military, to a naval officer. So I don't really count, but I kind of sort of a little bit count.
She's a military brat.
Yeah, MilFam is part of the community.
Yeah, MilFam's in there. You got MWR treatment.
Yeah, I have an old DOD passport from when I was a baby. I think instead of even a birth certificate, because they needed to, get me back in the country. So
I think you count them.
Oh,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
Yeah, I think a DOD passport counts.
One of us.
We collect you. We collect civilians.
Oh, I'd love to be collected. While we're on the subject, though, I just want to let you guys and all of the listeners know that I just spoke to the legal director of the Orders Project, where service members and veterans can call for legal advice about when they're going into a situation where they think there might be unlawful orders, or when they're in a situation where they think they might have unlawful orders and they are given legal advice by JAGs or former JAGs, former military judges. And so that's called the Orders Project, ordersproject.com. And they have a signal. And I just wanted to get that out there because, with three of you guys here being veterans, I figured our viewer base might, skew that way. And I want to make sure that is out there, that there is legal advice available, knowing that all sorts of potentially unlawful shit is going on.
That's a huge thing, too, because when you're in the military, there's, everything's the chain of command in UCMJ, and you're scared to death of who's going to get informed of what. So that alone, having somewhere outside of the service to go and to talk to somebody about, that's going to make service members 100 times more comfortable, reporting those things and being open and honest about them. So that's awesome, Stephanie.
Yeah, I think that, he said, the default is to follow your orders, mm-hmm. But know that there are people here who can give you advice and to have your back and to represent you if you need it, kind of a referral service. So ordersproject.com.
Yeah, and I've talked a little bit about them too. I know Glenn Kirshner has mentioned them on a show of his, and I trust that Glenn is going to give out reasonably good advice and pretty good advice. He hasn't steered us wrong. And so when he mentioned it too, I was like, okay, this is another valuable, trusted source so far. And Stephanie, as you had your interview, I'm going to cross-post it here on Banner and Backbone as well to help get it out and get more eyes on it. And so look out for that, everyone, as the cross-post of Stephanie's interview, because I think it is important. And I mean, I wrote an article that came out yesterday all about legal definitions and defining what it means to be either a civilian, or unprivileged belligerent, or a combatant, and how proper like handling of orders are supposed to be done, or chain of command is supposed to be done for the transfer of wounded people who are brought on board and detained. So I think having this understanding out there is going to be vitally important. And I think really soon too, because the Senate is having some very intense hearings now on things that are going on and the illegalities of them, without authorizations and things like that. And I think it's really important that we start like keeping this in the front of people's minds and get ahead and build the narrative on it of, if it's not do not obey orders, it's only obey legal orders. And I think if we get ahead of the narrative and define it as it should be, is only obey legal orders. If presented with illegal orders, here's your option. Or ahead of time, go here so you know what legal orders are and can appropriately prepare and defend yourself and be on offense for yourself.
I mean, it's been a long time since I was wearing a uniform, right? I got out in 2007, but I don't think that I had ever heard the term unprivileged belligerents until the last week. Had I come across that as an E3 in Iraq, I would have no idea what that means. Yeah. I mean, the most specific training that I got in handling detainees was don't call them POWs because they get more rights that way and they can use that in court. Which is
actually part of the training I've received too. Like, you don't call people POW until it's been an established status. And you don't want to be the one to establish that status on your own.
So I can only imagine that young sailors, Marines, Coast Guardsmen, whoever it is pulling these people out of the water, I don't know if unprivileged belligerence has been something that's briefed to them, what it means for them as the service members interacting with these people. I imagine not much has changed since I left, but who knows?
I think, to be honest, I think that would be a failure of leadership if these terms are not being taught, and these classifications and qualifications of people and the status difference between people, because that's literally the law of war. Like, it's all in the law of war manual. And a lot of like the definitions I pulled out are law of war, Geneva Convention, and you should know these as a service member. And am I saying that I knew all of this information when I was a service member? No. And I was in the intelligence community that handled people. Like, I knew the distinctions, but I didn't know it to the level I now do. Like, I'm teaching myself so that I can better prepare and equip everybody else around me. And we need service members to know these distinctions because, like I say in my article, it's a legal gray area, but it should not be the legal gray area, and is not by law the legal gray area for a single service member to have to decide as a field operator, as someone who's in a position where you're making moment by moment choices. That's a command decision on who should be considered legal combatants versus not. And then blurring the lines of, are we even in an armed conflict right now? Are we legally authorized to be doing what we're doing? Mm-hmm. How does the presumption of innocence fit into that? Because there's the presumption of civilian status, which I bet most service members don't know either, is that you're presumed civilian until proven otherwise, and you have to meet certain criteria to be considered a combatant of a recognized armed forces. Right. And Then you have the mixed combatants where they wear civilian clothes.
Right.
And we saw that in Iraq and Afghanistan. We see that in Ukraine and Russia. We see that in every modern war now is people don't wear uniforms anymore because there's not standing armies in every country. And
well, and also
sometimes
they want to be able to, melt back into the population without being found. There's
and
also
how do you manage that as a service member without clear and defined? This is where rules of engagement come in. This is where they're like having clear and defined rules of engagement are really important. We don't have those. Like, what the fuck are the rules of engagement right now for Venezuela and the Caribbean other than kill them all was
Vibes.
possibly reported. And that's the vibes of it, if not the actual like legal words he's used.
Yeah. So one of my favorite historians, Tad Sturmer, who was a guest on my first episode of On Offense, by the way, he did a video today on, asking for people to think about the fact that there's a big uproar about the second strike. Very, very clearly illegal. But we shouldn't concede the ground that is questioning whether the first strike was legal. I'm not a lawyer, but from my perspective, I don't think that we are in an armed conflict. I don't think that a boat that is apparently not carrying any weapons, that can't make it to the United States and that can't cause any harm to U.S. forces, I don't think that it is justified to hit them with a missile, period. So I hope that as the Senate and House convene these hearings, we are asking serious questions about the first strike on every one of these boats, because I believe that the first strikes are murder too.
Right. And I heard somebody who was former Navy SEAL, maybe it's the guy who was an officer, saying not only is it the law of armed conflict, but there's a different law of armed conflict for the maritime conflict, which is very clearly it's much more clear about who's a combatant and who isn't in a maritime scenario. So
yeah, and I haven't looked specifically into the maritime law, which somebody also commented on my article, was like, hey, can you also expand into the maritime? That would be really good to have. And my response is yes, I will do that. It's not extra homework. It's preparing myself for these discussions so everybody else can be prepared. So like, I want to know those differences too. But we also have to, like, in the end, the real question, like Chris, you just asked, was, is it murder first and foremost? Like, that's the most important question. Are any of these strikes legal? We've now possibly at this point, extrajudiciously killed at the very least would be, I guess, a term.
Over 80 people.
Over almost, I think it's 85 plus now, because we killed 4 more yesterday in the 22nd strike. 4 more people on an unidentified vessel in the Caribbean. The U.S. military, specifically the U.S. Navy and the Marines right now, are killing people just without cause. And military has built into it a due process system. And part of that system is identifying who is a lawful combatant and who is not. And that's a really important distinction. And those distinctions require competent tribunals. Those distinctions require oversight and congressional approvals. And none of it's happened. And I think all of it falls squarely on Pete Hegseth's head right now.
Yeah. What's important for us to consider now, I really hate slippery slope arguments, but I'm saying this as a threat analyst, as someone who wrote manuals on what the Trump administration would do should they be elected like 2 years ago. And I've been right to the month on a lot of that. So I don't say this lightly, but if we are treating civilians outside of the United States as lawful target, it's not lawful, but we're treating them as if they're lawful targets for violence. I don't think that the Trump administration's logic wouldn't apply to killing terrorists domestically. And Antifa, of which I am a leader, by the way, come get me, motherfucker. Antifa is now a terrorist organization. You know, I lead an organization called Veterans Fighting Fascism. I file paperwork with the IRS, right? There's a solid fucking paper trail that I am providing material support to Antifa by, maintaining my websites. Am I a lawful target because I'm a terrorist now? I don't think that the Trump administration's logic, with Stephen Miller basically driving domestic policy, would prohibit an eventual use of military force against me.
Well, they haven't.
Doesn't mean a missile strike in the middle of New York, but
it might mean a helicopter going into the middle of Chicago and dropping,
or drones flying over Norfolk, Virginia, and tracking everybody's movements every single moment of the day, and not having proven like FAA flight plans or approvals or data handling policies. If you're the police department of Norfolk, Virginia, I'm calling you motherfuckers out because you didn't have a data handling policy in place before you installed flock safety cameras all over your city. And that's fucking atrocious. Like, and so like, this really does tie in a lot too with the final chapters of today, of On Tyranny. So for those who might not be or are new here, this is the Anti-Fascist Book Club. So, hey, I'm anti-fascism. Like, come at me, bro. I'm never going to change my mind. Fascism sucks.
Well, I'm all for freedom over fascism, so it puts me in the same club too. And if I can be a leader, I'm all over that.
I want to be a leader of something. At least this might get our names in the history book somehow. I don't know how, but yes.
It's really
next to Zouhari, like.
Well, we need to put it in the notes, dear future historians. And I say that laughingly because when I was doing my dissertation, one of the subjects I was writing about wrote in his notes, I hope for future historians you're looking at this right now. And so,
someone's got to do it then. Stephanie, as a historian, I hope you're doing that, being like, hey, future younger generations, look at my shit. It's good. It's worth reading. And I think, Evan, you're the only one safe so far because yours is news from Underground. So, but then again, maybe the Underground Railroad, they'll tie that to that. And,
I'm on the edge. They'll get me sooner or later. One thing that I wanted to point out about your piece yesterday real quick, Nick, is you mentioned that before we get into everything, you mentioned the importance of like sailors and members of the Navy, members of the military, knowing these things, being able to distinguish unidentified belligerents and things like that. One of the most important parts of that piece that you put out yesterday that I found was like the civilian response to it. And by you putting that out there and letting the civilian world know that information and like teaching them about it, I think you saw it in the response, but that only equips them with being able to put more pressure on elected officials and more pressure on the media and everything to cover it in that way. So I thought that was a really good aspect of it. I just wanted to get that out there before we got started.
Thanks. I'm glad. And I have noticed that is the feedback on like, oh, thank you for putting this out. This is important. I'm glad we now know this. And that was the intent, is make it easy for somebody who is not in the armed services or in the armed services who doesn't know this either to take a look and go, oh, this is what the law of war says. This is what the Geneva Convention says. Here's a couple links to how to get there. I cited all of my sources throughout the entire thing. Like every quote has a source on it. So just that forewarning, though, however, is the law of war does not allow for like direct source quoting to the exact page. So I will see if I can make those clearer. So it says like page number and like chapter numbers or something, so you can more easily get to it. And part of the reason I wrote it too is because in what we're talking about today for On Tyranny, chapter 18 is Be Calm When the Unthinkable Arrives. And that's a terrorist attack. And that means some sort of terror management, because I'll read what Timothy Snyder said to open the chapter is modern tyranny is terror management. When the terrorist attack comes, remember that authoritarians exploit such events in order to consolidate power. The sudden disaster that requires the end of checks and balances, the dissolution of opposition parties, the suspension of freedom of expression, the right to a fair trial, and so on, is the oldest trick in the Hitlerian book. Do not fall for it. And I
He
think
used the Reichstag fire as an example in that chapter, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the Reichstag fire is the first thing he talks about in the chapter. He says the Reichstag fire was the moment when Hitler's government, which came to power mainly through democratic means, became the menacingly prominent Nazi regime. It is the archetype of terror management. And I think we've seen like micro events that were attempts of terror management. I'm going to say Charlie Kirk's assassination would be a micro attempt at sparking terrorism. The recent shooting of two National Guards members in D.C. Would be a micro event to try and use that.
Assassination attempt.
Yeah, any of the Trump assassination attempts, anything like that. Like, I think those are micro events, but I think we're leading up to, say, a USS Cole style event where the Navy has a attack on one of its vessels in the Caribbean, either because the US paid for it to happen, which is one leaked event from, or one possible situation that may have already occurred, or it just happens on its own, and it gets overblown because, we've been wagging the dog by killing 85 people in the Caribbean Ocean. Like, at some point, the US would have done it after one. Like, so what are we have to manage what that expectation is going to look like, because they're talking about openly invading Venezuela now. And I think that's a really disturbing next step to the suspension of freedoms here back at home.
They don't have any coherent reason, but I've thought for a long time that this, and that's because, they've said it out loud, this is an expansionist regime. They want to expand the power of the United States or Russia or whoever they're answering to. So whether it's Greenland or Canada or Panama or now Venezuela, it's not at all, it's not surprising to me that they are attempting to invade it. It's both a wag the dog situation, hey, look over here, but it's also a atrocity on its own to get us into to a stupid war that makes everything worse, that just reinforces the problems that they're saying they're fighting against, but they really want to, destabilizing South and Central America is really not going to help the immigration situation, sadly. The whole drug situation, fentanyl is not produced in Venezuela at all, zero. So it's just, we all know this. Me saying it again isn't going to convince anybody here that wasn't already convinced. But the point I want to make is that the unthinkable has actually already arrived, and we're a little bit inured to it. Which, that thing, we're not waiting.
Snyder mentions, like, in it, I took a couple notes on these last 3 chapters, and he talks about how Snyder warns that emergencies are when democracy is most vulnerable, and because people accept drastic measures in exchange for safety. Do you think that the American people are going to buy that? Do you think that they're going to accept any drastic measures in this situation for perceived safety? I mean, we see already the uproar about the boat strikes and everything. Do you think the American people are even going to buy it?
It depends. It depends on the perceived threat. If the homeland were to be struck by something that looked like a foreign adversary, I do think that even as idiotic as everyone in this administration is, there would be an American Pavlovian response to rally around the president. But with that said, despite the attempted sabotage, we still have a functioning national security and intelligence apparatus. So I don't think that something like that is imminent or even likely.
Although that's like degrading, every day with, the Five Eyes sort of kicking us out of their intelligence networks in the Caribbean. And I don't know. I feel like we're still looking ahead for some event, and we've kind of downplayed all the things that have happened thus far. The question, will it matter? Well, I mean, will the American people stand for it? Well, my question is, does it matter? Like, are we standing for Trump? No. But does it matter? Well, they have all of the levers of power in the federal government. So, without voting ourselves out of it or figuring out a workaround in federalism with different states, or having a real civil war, like, what difference does it really make? What is the American people standing for something or not standing for something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, we do have ICE kidnapping people. We have what is effectively and literally a secret police force, kidnapping people without warrants, using violence without any accountability whatsoever. So you're right, Stephanie. Like, we have already passed that point where we're already experiencing authoritarianism. It's not coming. It's very definitely here, and people are already getting hurt and getting disappeared. I guess the question is, what type of event would it take for the average American to be willing to be uncomfortable? That is the biggest thing for me. Like, I reflect on my time as a young soldier coming home from Iraq. I felt so disconnected from my country, not because, iPhones had advanced in the year of 2005 that I was gone, but because I came home and realized that nobody gave a shit. Nobody cared that my friends were getting hurt and dying, and that I, like every one of my friends, would pay for the war for the rest of our lives. But we were a country at war. And that's and I bring myself back to then, where I used to be like, why isn't anyone talking about fucking Afghanistan? That war started earlier. In 2005 or 6, when I got home, no one was talking about Afghanistan. So my expectation for the average American, meaning the plurality of the majority of Americans, is that the majority is not willing to get uncomfortable unless they are already feeling catastrophic personal pain. And that would have to be an economy that is in shambles. It would have to be grocery stores are empty. It would have to be like the beginning of the pandemic was. The beginning of the pandemic is the thing that convinced enough people that they shouldn't vote for Trump again. But that was a smidge of Americans whose mind were changed, even though every one of our lives had changed for the worst in an incredibly dramatic way.
Yeah, and that took a cataclysmic event where every single person's life in America was touched. And because you were the thing that I was thinking about, Chris, is you said that there's that paper trail leading back to you being a supposed member of Antifa, and with Trump designating and coming after Americans, like, would that be the event? And even then, we're so divided that I don't think that him coming after Americans, if they were labeled as Antifa, I don't even think that that's a bridge too far for most people,
Well, they're already coming after Americans.
Yeah.
They're already coming after. I mean, there was a guy in, was it Norfolk or Arlington maybe, where they got some military
And veterans too. Yeah.
veterans and active duty in uniform, and kidnapped them off the street. If that's like not American, then I'm not sure what is.
We become so desensitized to war itself, and I think, and to me, that's really on purpose, is the technification of war and removing the human element from it desensitizes us to where it's now like war to a lot of people is what is the profit margin and not what is the human cost, or what is the cost in general. And I think we need to, part of what I'm trying to do anyways, and I think part of what a lot of us are trying to do is rehumanize war and what it actually means to be at war and what it might mean for our own homeland. And although we may not be in a high threat assessment for an event to happen, it's concerning that events like what happened in Russia with Operation Spiderweb can happen, and the lack of security that the US has around drones. Like there are unidentified flock safety drones flying in Norfolk, Virginia, outside the largest naval station in the world. Like that should be concerning to every American as a national security threat. Of if you get used to drones flying around right outside a military base that aren't identified, what happens when a swarm of those drones, say, either attacks the civilian population to start an event or attacks the military population, which either through the civilians because they live outside a base, or just attacks the base and we lose the largest naval station in the world in one swift go. Like that's a threat that we're not prepared for because our government doesn't want to be prepared for it. And I think that's part of the catalyst too of these Black Swan, false flag, these types of terrorist events that can and may eventually happen depending on how desperate this regime feels it is, because a cornered wolf will do the most extreme things to get out. And that's what we have to treat them like. They're a wounded cornered wolf that's going to take the most extreme measure if they think it's going to keep them in power and make sure accountability doesn't come their way. So that's my fear, is like the idea of like we're going to see one of these on purpose is unfortunately like a real fear nowadays.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is at least somewhat likely is more likely than not is these kind of like so-called meme shooters, these self-radicalized incel types who have gone down this like Telegram neo-Nazi pipeline, and their objective is not political in the sense that most people associate with the word politics. Their greatest idea is just to cause chaos. They're doing it for the laughs, as if life is a video game. I mean, that is a very simplified version, but that kind of explains to the layperson, I think, the ideology that we're dealing with. People who are like Joker from the Batman.
I saw somebody's reporting called them assassin influencers, like they're all trying to one up each other and things like that.
Yeah, and the goal is not to win anything, right? It's not to advance an ideology. It's just to get a laugh, and that's the sick, sad truth. And that type of attack, could hit either side, either political side in the traditional sense, and it could be exploited by the Trump administration.
So thinking on being like either political side, a majority of right-wing violence, a majority of the political violence in this country is committed by people on the right wing, or who would identify as either right-winger in nature, nowadays we talk a lot, or people are starting to talk a lot about red pill and black pill movements and the nihilist movements of Nick Fuentes and folks like that, is what happens if it, because are they, in your understandings or your views from history and your and different perspectives, is it more likely that they will continue hurting their own that are breaking away and are causing really big fissures to possibly happen? Say Marjorie Taylor Greene, Rand
Nancy
Paul,
Mace, there's rumors about
Nancy Mace, Thomas Massey, folks like that. Is it more likely that they would be the target of these types of events compared to Democratic lawmakers? Because I think if you see a Democratic lawmaker who is not, say, super actively against the regime, all of a sudden get assassinated, I think that would galvanize. Or like if Mark Kelly were to have
Kelly maybe, but okay, I think it's a yes and, because Democratic lawmakers in Michigan were targeted, were assassinated. And Josh Shapiro's house, the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, was firebombed, and it didn't galvanize. I
think it would have been different had Governor Shapiro actually been home. I think that would have had a very much larger galvanizing impact because of the idea of anti-Semitism. And if you didn't support it, they would have galvanized on that. Anyone from any side.
Yeah. I think there are layers to the Republican fissures, and I don't know that we know what's going to happen. Is Marjorie Taylor Greene like taking her bat and ball and going home, or is she starting a new movement that will, once Trump dies, that might want another avatar of hatred, whereas JD Vance is just a technocratic, evil little shit. So and you could quote me
that
on
gets
that.
left in group chats by himself. Such a fucking loser.
He's the one everyone mutes and blocks when they just send stuff, and you're like, yeah, we don't want to hear you.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a lot of yes and. Like, things have already happened that haven't really caused a movement, but if it were Mark Kelly, would it be different? Very possibly. He's the closest thing that we have right now to an American hero, like a Captain America, which actually should be, like, now that I think about it, that's like some really good, like, parallel shit that somebody should be doing for his candidacies, right? Is casting him as Captain America, which was actually started. Okay, I'm going to take us on a little bit of a side trail here.
Yes.
So in the 40s, before the United States joined the war, there was a big Nazi movement. Mm-hmm. And a bunch of young men who were Jewish were really pissed off that the United States was not getting into the war. And they started creating comic strips where they created characters that punched Hitler in the face. It was the initial episode of Captain America, in order to try to get the American people on the side of anti-Nazi, like to get us into the war to fight these Nazis. So, like, things that you might think are sort of related, or maybe, wow, that's pretty coincidental that happened at the same time. No, that was like absolutely, my kid did a report on this, so I know it more than I maybe would like to. But there's a lot of, this is a freaking big country, and there are a lot of things going on at one time, and pulling apart the threads is really, really hard. So
yeah, there's that cultural aspect of promoting anti-fascism is super important. And not to pitch my show again, but On the latest
Please do
episode of
pitch.
On Offense, I got to talk to Ken Casey of Dropkick Murphys, and I got to ask him, like, hey, I grew up listening to punk music.
That's awesome.
What happened to all of your colleagues, your contemporaries? And like where is Rancid? Where is even not necessarily punk music, but like System of a Down? You know, I know fucking Tom Morello is off doing his thing, but like Rage can't get back together for actual fascism. Like now that it's here, those types of cultural movements, I think, helped to galvanize people against the Iraq War. You know, in my youth, I think that those types of movements obviously influenced the rejection of the Vietnam War in the 60s and 70s, right? You think about like the whole entire hippie movement, right? It was art. It was music. Those types of things are important. And you know, we've got books. That's what this is for. Yeah, that could be a form of art, but we need something that's more attractive.
We do. I've been talking about this for a long time. It needs to be like everywhere. The right has figured out how do we talk about politics without talking about politics, and we do a shitty ass job of that. You know, it's more movies, it's more music, it's all of the different ways that we consume culture, even if it's creators not talking about politics. And I think that, one, we don't fund it properly, as all of us might actually understand. But also, like, I don't think we appreciate how important it really is to the entire zeitgeist and to actually getting a group, you know, whatever it is, the critical mass in a movement to, you know, overthrow this regime.
I think it's going to have to be creators and people, excuse me, because we see with the stranglehold that Trump has on the media essentially right now with the mergers and the acquisitions and everything that and how billionaires are funding right-wing media but not putting any, because there's no incentive in putting any money in on pro-democracy or, you know, pro-left or liberal movements. And so I don't think that we're going to get any movies made or TV shows or anything like that anytime soon that are going to make any major cultural shifts. So I think it's really important for, I mean, you guys are all doing the work and everything, but it's important for more people to take the step to become a creator or to put their voice out there. And in other avenues besides just doing lives and talking and stuff, like Stephanie said, just creating skits or anything, making fun of it, making fun of fascism and things like that. If those take off and those go viral, then that sort of starts to put a chip in the armor, you know?
Yeah, like if you know how to like make a newer version of what would have been an old Flash website that just like plays fun propaganda basically for pro-democracy, people will follow it. People will look at stuff like that because they want to have joy. Like we need, Eric in our chat said, and I was going to bring it up anyways, was we need music, art, we need just general creativity, because the problem is pro-democracy became boring and
because we're self-righteous and
tight and political. You needed a PhD. Nothing against PhDs, but you needed a PhD to understand it. You had to be a constitutional scholar to understand the Constitution and what it means. But that's not what the framers and the founding fathers wrote our documents for. It was for the common person to be able to say, hey, these are my freedoms. This is what I can do. And this is what the government is limited to. And MAGA and the right wing taps into the ability to do stuff like that on a much better scale than we do. And I keep saying it is we need to flood the zone for democracy, but we just need to flood the zone with good content and
Right.
strong, like what Evan you described as scholar warriors, and intelligent masculinity for men who need to step up and do the space that women have been doing for a long time without our support. And we need to have some vaginal fortitude to punch a Nazi, and or make it zeitgeist and popular opinion that that is the right thing to do, either metaphorically or literally, if it has to at some point. And I'm not advocating for violence. I'm just saying, like, I grew up with punk rock and heavy metal as my music scene.
And what
the
movies
thing
were
you
you
learn-
watching? I mean, you're a young one, but even in, you know, especially in the 80s.
I
know
grew
you
up
were.
on Star Wars and
Well-
wore through multiple copies of that. That's an anti-fascist movie.
Yes, but a lot of things are like, I mean, one of the greatest things I think in this century has been Hamilton. I mean, and a lot of people know it, but that is a work of genius. We need not just more. We need more works of genius, but we have to understand that small is also
Yeah.
good. I've started.
The more you put it out, the better it is, because you'll learn to be more creative. You'll learn your own craft, and if you like it, and like I've been doing Substack now and lives like this for 6 months almost, and it's taken me a while to get better. Like, I'm learning how to be a better host. I'm learning the tool set. I'm learning how to be just a better guest, and like how to get information out in a good way. And I think part of that too is our final 2 chapters, just in general, are be a patriot and be courageous. And well, yeah, be as courageous as you can. That last one is when the unthinkable is here. You have to continue to be courageous, even at the risk of death. Like, you have to be willing to die for freedom, or you'll fall under tyranny. That's what the chapter starts with. It's live free or die. That's New Hampshire's motto. New Hampshire, start living up to your motto, bro.
Right.
Like, I grew up next to you,
Hamilton.
upside down Vermont. Live free or die, and we ain't free if we're under tyranny.
Right. It's also, you know, Hamilton saying to Burr, you know, what do you stand if you don't stand for anything, what will you fall for? Like, it's all part of the same thing, but I think we're so big and disconnected from one another, and things happen on the other. Eric in the chat saw someone kidnapped in Miami on the way to the airport this morning, but me in Massachusetts, especially since I don't watch TV or cable news, it's so far away that we have to figure out a way to make the immediacy more, humanize each other. I'm going to have somebody on in a couple weeks who studies. Hey, this is another, Eric, I'm warning you, this is a little bit of a jog. In the 1950s, the United States paid for a lot of cultural production of like Christmas movies that made Christmas this anodyne thing, this, you know, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, and, you know, all of these things that, along with John Wayne, all sorts of things, was entirely purposeful. And I'm having someone on in a couple of weeks who will talk about that. She just wrote a book on it. And we're not doing that anymore. And the other side is. And I think if we do it, it's almost accidental. Oh, someone's dog is
That's
being
mine.
protective.
Nick's safe, everybody.
I'm safe. Nobody's come in. Don't worry. Well, nobody bad has come. Yeah. No, I totally agree, Chris. And how do we wrap this into being a patriot and teaching people that what this is doing, like what we're doing right now, is patriotic, and it makes you, it helps make you a patriot, and it is courageous to do this. Like, how do we help show other people and convince other people to step out and do it with us? Chris?
I mean, the Anti-Fascist Book Club was born. The idea was born just over a year ago. Just after the election, a lot of people were asking me, because I studied the far right forever, you know, should I read? What should I expect out of the Trump administration? So I came up with a list of 5 essentials to help people understand what we were going to be in for. I didn't expect for that video to go viral. It got like 1 million views, and people started writing me and saying like, hey, I'm starting my own book club. Could you give us a bigger list? Could you tell us what to do? So I just wrote an instruction manual. So anyone can access it. It's on my nonprofit's website, veteransfightingfascism.org. Basically, the entire website is dedicated to promoting the Anti-Fascist Book Club. The idea here, and we're doing this digitally because we have a national audience, but the idea here is to help people have an excuse to organize locally. Right. So this list of books and the instruction manuals on, what sections to read and what questions to ask your group to get conversation started, I was very deliberate in making the guideline only 6 meetings long, because I know that if you get people together in the same space 6 times, you don't need Chris Goldsmith anymore. You will have your unit. You will be able to fight fascism in your backyard. And what does that look like in your backyard? It means stopping Moms for Liberty from banning books. And you could do that. It doesn't take a tremendous amount of bravery to show up at a school board meeting and just have your voice heard at the local level. That's not to say it's always 100% safe, right? Yeah. Some maniacs do show up to those things, but you have to hold the ground for democracy. You have to go on offense against all of these fascists who are implementing fascist policies in your local town, when most people don't even realize that this is going on, this organized fascist effort.
Yeah, I think putting it out there is a big part of it. Is just put it out there. Be uncomfortable, or be comfortable being uncomfortable in the next years, not just in the next years until this is over. Be comfortable being uncomfortable, because we have to continue getting past this. And it's always uncomfortable to put yourself out there. Like, right. Even now, after 6 months of doing this, I've never done like an in-person live at where I would stand on stage and talk to somebody and like a group of people sitting on stools and stuff and having that. I would be scared to death right now.
Instant panic attack.
Like instant panic attack. But I can do this right now here, but I'm willing to go and do that and like make that a step of what I do for the media space that I'm in, but also to get my message out and to get the community's message out. Is like, I'm willing to confront that fear and be courageous enough to do it so that this can get out there and it can be heard. And we just take those little bits of courage every day and they add up.
Yeah. And Eric said something, and I just want to add something to what you've been saying, Nick, is that all of those things are true. And as Chris says, and the more we do it locally, in person, in community, with each other, and I'm the last person to talk, because when the pandemic started, I was like, oh, I don't have to see anybody. That's amazing. But that's, I think the key is like really actually doing it in your own backyard, whether if you're in a red area, fighting Moms for Liberty, if you're in the blue area, fighting for the state to pick up the slack on SNAP benefits. There's something to do everywhere.
Yeah. And I think part of that, go ahead, Evan, before I do the next.
I was just going to say, I think Chris made a really good point, is that doing it locally is a really big step that you can make personally. And if you create a book club like Chris was talking about, and I did my master's thesis on access to local public meetings, like municipal meetings and everything. So you don't need those meetings. Everybody's going to have a turn to talk, whether it's 1 minute, 2 minutes, you're going to have access to that meeting. There's other ways to have access to it through like internet and things like that. But if you go and show up to one of those meetings and you take your book club, you don't need a group of 50 people to take over a municipal meeting and make your point heard. You get 5 people and you guys show up and you go back to back to back to back. and you guys are all making the same point to the city council or your town hall or whatever, then that's going to be so effective in them, because they're going to huddle after that and they're going to talk about it and they're going to go, oh, fuck, I don't want to hear from these people again next week. Let's see what we can do to address this a little bit, or even placate them. You're making some form of change, and you can do that with just 5 people. And by starting a book club or reaching out to people, I'm not the best about it because I have my own issues and I'm fucking scared of people and all that. But
I mean, I'm with you, Evan. I'm solidarity in my own home, on my own time with you.
Exactly. But even if you can't do that, get on here, get on Substack. I get scared to death to get on here and talk to people, but I've never felt better about actually doing it. I've never felt more fulfilled about trying to make sense of things and speak the truth. And other people have responded to it. And I think that that's the way that we do this. You know what I mean? I think, and if you reach out to people, they're so much more kind than you would expect. And they're so much more willing. If somebody else asks them, like, hey, can we talk about this? They're going to go the extra mile to be like, yeah, I've got somebody else to talk about it with too. You know what I mean? And if we do that on a large scale, if you encourage one other person, 2 other people, and then form a group and form a community, like I just started my personal Substack, and then I've met all of you guys through it, and everything's only grown because of that. And I feel like that's the way that the message grows too, you know?
And I think part of that, at least for me, is this final closure of our show for today, because we're reaching just about the hour mark, is 2 things. Is one, we finished On Tyranny. Today was our final discussion for On Tyranny for Timothy Snyder's book. So we're going to start our next reading next week, which I'll announce here, which is Strongman Mussolini to the Present by Ruth Ben-Ghiat. I think it's also the next one on the book club's list. Unlike the book club, we don't do it all in a week to read and then discuss the single book in a week. It's taken us a bit to go through this one because the more information we can arm everyone with in smaller consumable chunks, probably the better.
Even it's also more consumable for us.
Yeah.
Right? Like, yeah, there's so many books to read out there, you know?
Yeah. And why would I want to rush through all the books? Like, I want to make sure that we get the information out so that people know the truth and have solid facts. And this is where I get to promote everybody else here too, and myself, but this is where I get to promote everybody else and help build that community so people's voices do continue to get out more and shared with different audiences. So step 1, come support Banner and Backbone. We are running a special right now for Blue Friday, where you get 50% off your first year, I believe it is, as well as we have now opened our founding subscriber program for the Backbones of the Banner, and feel free, if anybody wants to become a founding subscriber, you can always opt to go over the founding pledge if you'd like to, but any way you can support is how you can support, and that's really important, is free subs, paid subs, sharing, forwarding, re-emailing, sending to your chat groups. That's what makes a difference, and that's how the word gets out more organically. Next on our list, and I'm going to go from bottom to top, starting with her new icon or her actual logo that I finally got up there, is Stephanie Wilson with Freedom Over Fascism. Steph?
So I have a podcast and live show, Freedom Over Fascism, which is Tuesday and Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm on episode 101 or something like that. And my point is to help people understand the context of our moment, what we can do in community, how we can make connections, and how do we take civic action. And I love alliteration, so that's kind of a little bit of and the Oxford comma. But so, and I'm a little bit of an intellectual snob, and I really am sorry about that. But the point is to really try to get as much information that's interesting, talking about the issues that really matter to various pieces of our community, the things that are below the surface, not just the daily news. So please come and join us. You can find it at freedomoverfascism.us on every audio podcast platform, and on Substack, which is where that link will take you.
Awesome.
So thank you all for being here.
Thanks, Steph. And next, good friend, News from Underground with Evan Fields.
I appreciate you, man. Yeah, you guys subscribe to News from Underground. A lot of people know me from my work with Lincoln Square, writing for them and everything. But I run my own publication on Substack called News from Underground. And I do a weekly show called the Midweek Burn on there, where we're just starting to do interviews. This week we had on Tara Palmieri and Rick Wilson. So that was exciting.
Wow.
We've got some guests lined up for like the next month. And I just try to promote transparency, call out the bullshit and corruption where I see it, and just shine a light on, policy and good things for democracy. So I do a lot of writing on there too. You guys can get the Underground newsletter, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, check it out. I appreciate you.
Appreciate it, Evan. Thanks so much. Glad you're with us today. Glad you joined us for your first show.
Yeah, and I'll be back. Trust me.
Awesome. And then next, my good friend Chris Goldsmith with On Offense.
So, Nick, can I throw you a curveball and ask if I can share my screen for a moment?
Oh, heck yeah.
Okay. So
does it give you
for the audience, this is not something I cleared with Nick. He doesn't know about it. So I apologize for the technical difficulties as we try to figure out how I can share my screen.
Oh, I got you. We'll
Okay.
get there in a second.
Are you already seeing the preview, Nick?
Did you hit the little
Yes.
thing at the bottom? Okay.
There we go.
There we go.
So
Ooh.
in the spirit of being labeled a terrorist, I wanted to create a how-to Antifa guide. So I'm not going to post about this because I'm not totally ready, but this is a little gift to people who are watching this show right now. You are the only ones who are going to know about it. I'm not posting about it until it's ready. So if you find a broken link, I'm sorry, the site is not ready yet. But I created a brief list, a short reading list, expanding the Anti-Fascist Book Club reading list. So the first part teaches you how to understand anti-fascism, understand fascism so that you recognize it when you see it. This is how to fight against it. It is an academic overview of anti-fascist action throughout history. And I think it's important to note that though fascism only became a thing in the 20s, 30s, when Mussolini, basically named it that, the ideas behind fascism hadn't, they existed for long before that. So the Black anti-fascist tradition goes back to predating before the rise of Mussolini and fascism. So I think it's important for people to recognize that fascism existed before the name existed. So that's my little gift to you. If you go to veteransfightingfascism.org, up at the top, you've got your 0 through now 4. Again, the website might be a little broken. I apologize. No one knows about this except for you right now.
And it may or may not get linked in the show notes when we're done all of this today. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for that little preview. I like it. And go subscribe to Chris. Sell yourself, Chris, if you can, for your On Offense. Find
Sure,
out,
yeah.
everybody.
So the biggest thing I'm doing right now is On Offense. The nonprofits don't pay, frankly. If you want to donate to the nonprofits, that's great, but I don't pay myself for that. But I do need to make a living, and I am doing that with On Offense. So if you look for On Offense on any social media, it's at On Offense Pod. On Substack, it's onoffense.substack.com. Be a free subscriber. You're going to get everything. Paid subscribers will get full versions of my video podcasts as soon as I get them from my editor, which could be 12 hours before it goes live, could be a couple days before it gets live. I'm going to try and stack up episodes before the holidays because I want to publish every week.
Awesome. I look forward to it, and definitely go check out Chris's stuff. He's got some incredible work out, and his interviews are awesome. Also, his new studio looks great, and that plush leather chair looks pretty comfy. So good work, Chris. And
Thank you,
it's
sir.
fun. It's fun to get to do these shows with you. So thank you for hosting these with us. I appreciate it a lot. And then finally, come subscribe to me at Sick of This Shit Publications. It's where I do most of my non-political stuff. I'm trying to put it over not overtly political stuff or less overtly political stuff in some areas. Chronic illness discussions, poetry, creativity. I'm working with Stephanie Wilson and my friends Beth Cruz and Soso on some really cool stuff around creativity and photography and getting meditations out and different things like that. So come join us there. Come help me build that so we can all be visible and seen. And yeah, and then finally, again, join us here at Banner and Backbone. Come back next week, where we're going to start our series on Ruth Ben Ghiat's Strongman. I think that's going to be an incredible discussion we have over the next few weeks. And I will post links. Chris is showing off the video or the book cover. I'm going to post links, as always, for Thrift Books and bookstore.org, I think it is, or com. I don't remember which one, but so that you can get a thrifted version or from a local library rather than through the big retailers. So thanks, everyone, for being here with us for another incredible episode of the Anti-Fascist Book Club here on Banner and Backbone. And I look forward to talking to everyone next week and seeing everyone in the audience. Look for the show notes. They'll be out soon. And then, as I say goodbye on Tyranny, this will be the final episode 2 of the upcoming Banner cast, where I'm going to do the full series on Tyranny as a back-to-back, I think 9-hour, almost 10-hour long Banner cast. So check that out. You get a replay on all of the channels here coming up. And see all of our lovely faces for an entire day if you want. And then you can pick it apart and view all the learnings throughout. So thanks, everyone. Look forward to seeing you all next Friday, and have a great week. Go be anti-fascist and go be on offense for democracy. So thanks, everyone.